Hello and welcome. Chris from Missouri here, bringing you another video about vintage baseball cards. In this video, I'm going to show you some cards. I'm going to show you some cards that reminds me of a childhood past. See, I'm reluctant to do this video, and it's hard for me to do because the world lost a hero just a few days ago, and a friend of mine that that I was friends with his two sons growing up. And I was lucky enough to live in a town that we had three or four streets in our neighborhood come together in what could be called like a sandlot. And the person we lost is named Floyd Griffith. And Floyd was a hero. Floyd served in the Korean War and got injured twice, or got injured a few times and received two Purple Hearts. And then he went on to serve in the Air Force for over 20 years and retired in Lamont. And he had a distinction of retiring and living in a place that is right next to the Sandlot. And he and his wife Katie, who was of German descent with a very German accent and just a very big personality, raised kids. But I grew up with two of their sons, and they were kind of the leaders of the Sandlot. And I do this because, I want to honor Mr. Griffith, but I also want to talk about their sons and the Sandlot. Now, Mr. Griffith, what I knew him very well. Which I spent the night at his house numerous times with his sons, John and Gary. But he was a huge collector. He was not a baseball card collector, but he was a train collector. And if you would have the opportunity to go down in his basement, he had his whole basement set up with a train set and villages, and he kind of passed that hobby on to his son John. And John loved collecting trains and was proud of it when I'd go down there, and man, I was envious. And Gary, which was the older of the sons, Gary was a senior when John was a freshman, and at that time I was in seventh grade, yeah, something like that. But anyway, Gary was a baseball card collector, and he's the reason I got these cards up all around me, I believe, because I learned a lot from Gary. I He was a baseball nerd. He had the Baseball Digest. He's the one that taught me how to read a box score. He's the one that taught me how to keep score. Matter of fact, when I was 14 and 15 years old, Gary took took time to coach a baseball team because me and another fellow person from our town was on this team. And what a great coach and a great success, and just a great knowledge of baseball. And John, I kind of grew up more with John. John kind of, he was probably the leader of the Sandlot. He was the better of the athletes that played there. He wasn't just a good athlete, but he worked hard. And what he forced us to do, he was a little bigger than us and older and stronger, and he did not take it easy on us. If you ask all the neighborhood kids that got to play, um, he just didn't take it easy. It didn't matter what sport it was, and I think it made me a tougher person altogether. And I believe Gary did the same thing. Every once in a while, a lot of times, Gary'd come out and play. Especially, we would go over, and it wasn't a sandlot, but it was the same group, and we'd go over and play on a concrete basketball court that was less than a quarter of a mile away, and we'd go over and play. And it was funny, just like I hope you guys got to do this as a kid, but you'd play until the street lights came on. And when the street lights came on, you hurried up and got home before you got in trouble with your parents. And then every once in a while, I would call and I'd say, "Mom, can I eat over at Mr. and Mrs. Griffith's house?" And of course, it was always yes. But you know, I, I posed the question: if you had a group of people that you got together with and played, uh, what when was the last day that you played? And I really can't remember it because in the wintertime we would, in the fall and winter, late fall and winter, we'd play football, and it was fun. and then it'd turn into spring, and we'd turn the football in for a baseball, and we'd have pickup baseball games, and we had then we'd pick up the basketball games in the summertime, and just continuously doing that. I probably did it for 6 or 7, 8 years, and then boom, it was no longer. And I believe that time came when John went off to school. He had the power to kind of get everybody together, and I think we kind of lost that once he left. And one thing that was unique about Mr. Griffith was his yard. His yard had fence in the back, and they had two dogs that I remember growing up with. It was really three eventually, and then in the front of their house they had a tree, a big old tall tree, and that was our kind of when John and I would reverse the field, and we'd use the church. There was a church on about a 3-acre lot, but there was a church that we used as a backstop, and we'd take a tennis ball and we'd stand about 50 feet away from home plate, and it would be just me and him, and we had this game, and he'd rear back and throw that ball as fast as he could, and I would hit it or strike out, one of the two. But if you hit it over the fence, it was a home run. If you hit it, you had to hit it over the tree to be a home run, or it was just a double. Like I said, sort of like our Green Monster. And if we had to play, he had to hit a certain feet to be a base hit, and then the pitcher would know when the ball would stop. The pitcher would field it, and to be an out, he had to throw it all the way to home plate for it to be an out. And we did that. And one summer, John had this great season in the summer, and he was 16 years old, and an American Legion team was about 15 miles away in a bigger town. But John was the youngest guy on his team, but he just was on a hot streak. And he batted third in a lineup of guys that went on to play a ton of college ball, a guy that's in the National Fast Pitch Hall of Fame, a guy that played for the Toronto Blue Jays, got traded for Cliff Johnson, a great pinch hitter. And John batted third in that lineup. And so the newspaper got curious, and they wanted to know how John, what John did to work out. And they came down, and John and I, we showed him what he was doing, and I was a part of that. And they did a big story on John in the newspaper, and I got my name in there. I was pretty excited, but it showed us working out. And so I miss my days playing on the Sandlot. Miss that time, and I cherish the memories. And when I get some cards out, every once in a while, I'll think of those guys and think of the time. And you guys heard me talk about Miss Dufresne collection. And John was the one that was mowing that went to Germany back to visit with his mom's family. And I was able to get cards like this from the Miss Dufresne collection. And the Yogi. Sorry, these are all turned around backwards. Now it's getting harder and harder to keep track of the Miss Dufresne collection because the yellow stuff keeps falling off in my cases, and eventually I'm just going to have to guess which ones are that. But I love these cards, and I love thinking about the past time like that, and I appreciate what John did to mold me as a player, and what Gary did to mold me as a knowledgeable Hall of Fame guy. I owe a lot to Gary for my baseball nerdness, and I really the family of Floyd and Katie Griffith was awful good to me growing up, and it's a sad day, but anyway, here's to Mr. Griffith, a war hero, and here's to the Sandlot. And remember, guys, it's just a hobby. Collect what you like.